I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. As always, we're promising a robust conversation, a good conversation. I hope you stay with us and also let your friends know that we're live now. We're streaming live to Facebook, to LinkedIn, and to YouTube across the Insight News page, and also across the pages for the Black Press of America, NNPA's Black Press USA. No matter where you're connecting with us, we want you to enjoy the program and engage. If you've got a comment, question, you want to jump in, just drop a note in the comment section and we'll shout you out. In fact, we love to know where you are, who you are, and get your feedback on any and all of the topics. And if you have other things that are on your mind that you want us to address in the course of this conversation, we're game for that as well. I am going to have a great conversation with some people who I think the intersection of this conversation is going to be wonderful and great. I'm going to start off talking to my guests who are sopranos and presenting at the production of The Snowy Day, an opera at Minnesota Opera. It's coming up. We'll give you the dates and times. But Leah Hawkins and Raven McMillan are celebrated sopranos, and I'm going to ask them to share their artistic journey and discuss the role of opera in preserving Black narratives and experiences. And the part that is important, not the part that is important, but the exciting part and challenge of this conversation is that we're going to also be talking with Dr. Brittany Friedman, who is a feminist sociologist and associate professor at USC. And she's going to discuss the recent California prison riot that involved 800 Black and Hispanic inmates. And this clash, she'll say, is one example of how systemic white supremacy operates within the US prison system to suppress Black political movements and disproportionately target communities of color. And we'll talk about that. And the question is, how does this examination of the prison complex, the prison system, the process, intersect with our presence and ability to live and be our artistic selves, to show up in the world of art, in the world of creativity? So it's a challenge that I'm going to put out to both myself and to my guests today to bring this all together. I think we can. It's about us examining the genius of our existence, the marvel of our survival, and the hope for the future that we have to commit ourselves to creating for ourselves, our families, and for humanity itself. Well, let me begin by inviting in Raven McMillan and Leah Hawkins. Raven, Leah, may I call you by your names, your first names?
Yes.
And would you call me by my name, Al? So good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Nice to see you.
And thank you for being here. Let me ask you to talk about Snowy Day and just introduce it to our viewers and listeners. Tell us about the play or the opera.
This is The Snowy Day. It's based on the book, also called The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, which a lot of people are familiar with. And it's basically taken from, the events in the book, which are that the protagonist, Peter, goes out to play in the snow and, does all types of snow activities, meets some other kids, et cetera, et cetera. And then when he's at home, he has his two loving parents. And basically the main conflict, I guess, is that Peter wants to keep a snowball. And then so when he brings it inside, he figures out what happens when you try to take snow inside. And luckily there is a happy ending though. So that's kind of the Snowy Day.
And how did you come to this work, to this particular opera?
I personally, I did a young artist program, which in opera is kind of like a training program that you would do like after school, like your undergrad or your grad degree. And so the young artist program I did was at Houston Grand Opera, and that is where we premiered this work by Joelle Thompson and Audrey Davis Pinkney. She's a librettist. So I did the world premiere in 2022. And so now I'm coming back to it.
Awesome. Leah, good afternoon and welcome. How did you come to this work? What's your role in your story about this production?
Yes. So I actually watched the world premiere in 2022 or 2021. I can't remember exactly when it was.
Yeah, I think the workshop was 21 and the premiere was 22, I think.
Okay. I watched it online, and I remember when I saw the piece, I said, "Oh, I need to sing that role. I need to sing Mama." And the composer is good friends with another friend of mine, and he said he thought it would be a good idea for me to learn it as well. So actually, I wasn't supposed to do this production. There was another soprano slated to do it. She had to cancel, and I got the offer in late December. Oh no, sorry, late November. So I think I was the moment I put it out there that I wanted to do it, the universe found a way for me to do it. So I'm really glad to be singing this work.
I interviewed Joel, the composer, last week, and I tell you, it was a wonderful interview, just amazing. And what was amazing about it was just the energy he brought. The energy was calming,
Yes,
relaxed, and I'm kind of a guy that's always grinding, right? I'm pushing. And then we turn on the show, and then Joel's whole energy is like,
yeah, yes,
relax, chill,
yeah.
think, and be in this moment. And it was like a good experience for me to run into. I think I was describing it to somebody. It was like when you're running real fast and you run into a wall of water, and the water is not threatening. It's just calming you down and absorbing
Wow.
you and allowing you to move differently, more freely,
Wow.
and to slow down. So that was the feeling I had. And I'm presuming that there's something of that energy that is in this production
Absolutely.
about a snowy day. And so, describe it from your point of view, from your character, Leah.
Well, I play the role of Mama, and I am watching my son go out and be independent for the very first time. And so I think it's something that a lot of parents deal with, the sort of duality of wanting their child to be independent and to do for themselves, but also to remain their babies. And so I think my character is caught between that, and she gives into it because who doesn't want to see their child happy? And I'm not a mother yet, but there's something in it that is so deeply touching to me and something that I can really relate to as being a sister and being an aunt. And the music is just so glorious. I mean, he wrote in winter sounds. Like it's I can't wait for people to hear it.
And your role, Raven?
Yeah, my role, I'm playing Peter, who is, Leah's son, mama's boy that is going out into the snow. And of course, he's a young boy, like around 7 or 8, that type of age. So there is a lot of energy and like childlike energy, childlike wonder involved in my role. But at the same time, his main arias, where he's featured alone, are rather introspective for a child. And I basically grew up as an only child, and so I feel like you have a lot of time to think. Even though you're a kid, you have a lot of time to be by yourself, kind of to be with your thoughts. And Peter, as a character, seems like a child who like appreciates that time, like just a time to think and a time to be introspective. So even though he's a high energy character, there's also those moments for him.
What are your personal stories? Where are you from, and how do you bring who you are into a role like this, into the genre, and into this role in particular, Raven?
Yeah, well, I am from Baltimore, Maryland. And like I said, I currently live in Houston after I did that Young Artist program a couple years ago. Um, and
I think we lost her for a second there. Leah, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Yeah, take the same question. Raven, are you back now? We lost you for a second. You froze up. Go ahead, come again. You're back.
Okay, perfect. So I was saying that I didn't come to opera specifically until I auditioned for my undergraduate program. And I was familiar with classical music from like high school choir and from like piano lessons and things like that. But yeah, kind of when I started my vocal performance degree is when I basically started singing opera. And I've kind of just followed the trajectory from there. I did undergrad, grad school, and then a young artist program. So in a way, it was kind of just laid out in steps for me, I guess, in my journey. So yeah.
Were there any surprises or challenges or moments of doubt in your career development and the choices you were making on your path to where you are today?
I would say that I don't really have big moments of doubt, but at the same time, I would say that the whole thing is a challenge. Kind of figuring it out as you go, especially. I mean, now it's been, all of those things collectively, undergrad and on, have been more than 10 years now, but at the same time, it still feels like um figuring things out as you go. You never know what's going to be next,
Mhm.
especially having made so many big changes in those 10 years. Like, first of all, just learning how to sing or how to use your technique and use your voice, to the best of your ability, and then learning about the repertoire, and then learning different roles, learning new works, and sometimes how you might do things differently in new works, going new places. So yeah, it's the whole thing is a challenge, but I haven't felt any supreme doubt. I've in fact felt like, I'm always where I'm supposed to be. And I think that's what keeps you kind of rising to the challenges.
Music in your family? Are you from a musical lineage?
My dad was somewhat of a singer, but he sang little with his friends, like little doo-wop type of
Mhm.
groups. um, Other than that, not so much. I actually make fun. I used to make fun of my mom. Now that I'm an adult, I don't, but I used to make fun of my mom for her not amazing singing voice. Yeah.
Leah, how about you? What's your background? Where did you come from, and how did you choose this path? And how did the path choose you?
Yeah.
And what does it mean for uh, your both acknowledging and developing the gift that you have?
Mm. So I was born and raised in Philadelphia,
Mhm.
and I do not come from a particularly musical family. My sisters all do something completely different. My parents as well do not sing or play or do anything like that. Um, but I was literally born with a voice, and
Mhm.
it is all I have ever done. I've never had a job outside of singing.
Hmm.
During COVID was really hard for me because I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? This is what I got. But no, so I started voice lessons at 12 because I knew I wanted to be a singer of some sort. But I saw my first opera when I was 12, and I went home to my parents and I said, that's what I want to do. I need to
Mm.
learn how to do that. And so we
Mhm.
found a voice teacher, and I started taking lessons, which I don't recommend. I don't think kids should take lessons at starting at 12. It's too young to
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Um, but I really got my ear was tuned to opera and to those sounds, and really was able to find my own voice within that. And I actually found my voice in listening to other Black opera singers, because when
Mhm.
I was listening to other singers, I wasn't hearing myself. I was like, that doesn't sound like me. That sounds like, an Italian woman or a German man. But
Mhm.
I was deliberately listening for voices that sounded similar to my own.
Mhm.
Um, so I went to high school for performing arts, and then I went to undergrad, Morgan State University, go Bears, for undergraduate music degree, and then I went to grad school for voice, and then 2 young artist programs. And for people who don't know, young artist programs are residency programs for young and emerging singers to get voice lessons, to get coachings, to do small roles, and to cover or sing bigger roles at an opera company. So it's a chance for us to really develop our crafts and get paid to do it. So
What
yeah.
what does our community know or not know about our presence in opera? What do we know about opera, and what do we not know? It's a big question, simple question at the same time.
Oh,
But when you think about it,
yeah.
Black folks in opera, what comes to mind?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a great question. I think for most people, when they think of opera, it's like, sung in Italian or some other language that maybe we don't speak, and it's, you know, us making sort of nonsensical sounds. That's what most people think it is initially, I think. And then when they're introduced to it, they realize, oh, there's so much more to this art form. And I think in our community, I think we don't realize there are a lot more Black opera singers than people know. I'm not saying that we are in huge numbers, but there are quite a bit of us out there. And it's always a blessing to get to do shows with multiple Black people. And I've realized I'm probably my truest self when I'm in a show full of Black people.
Raven, what do you think?
Yeah, I am in agreement with Leah. It is always nice doing a show with other Black people, in even beyond singers, in artistic, you know, directors, choreographers, etc. Like when more people that look like you are involved, there's just kind of a comfort level, I think. And I think usually when you talk to other Black people who are not necessarily in opera or like, you know, opera super fans, usually the first thing I hear is like, I've never seen an opera, or sometimes, you know, depending on the person, I didn't know Black people sang opera. So I think that there's just a disconnect, but I think that that's a lot of modern audiences as well. Not only Black people, but I think that people that go to operas grew up with some experience with it. And so I feel like, you know, the Black community might be lacking in that experience with it. But I do find that, you know, in general, people you meet on the street are not well versed in opera anyway.
Well, you know, when I think of opera, I think of Paul Robeson. I think of Leontine Price, of Marian Anderson, Kathleen Battle. And I've had their CDs here in my house, and on any given summer day, put on a Kathleen Battle CD and open the windows and turn it up as loud as I can. Because the music just fills, you know, the house and fills the neighborhood, because I want to share it with everybody because it's so rich and so brilliant. And so that leads me to the question that I ask a lot of audiences. I think almost a professional audience member. I love being in audiences. I love watching performance, and I love watching how artists sort of get into or go beyond themselves, how they are transformed. So as an audience member, I'm particularly interested in witnessing the moment of transformation in the production itself. Does that make sense to you? So I'm coming to see you, but I'm coming to see not only the whole story, but I'm actually tuned in to expect and hope that in a twinkling of an eye, the room will change. Everything will be different because something has been or is being revealed that lifts me, that engages me. That's what I do as an audience member. Does that make sense to you, Raven? And do you see that in audiences? And is there a moment of transformation as you perform?
Yeah, I mean, I think that does make sense. I think it's when, you know, when the things are revealed on stage. For me, well, let me start with, for me as a performer, I always feel a big shift when we do get to the point of rehearsing that we're in costumes. And then especially also when we have the real set and everything. I think as a performer, it's definitely an immersive experience when we're on stage. And it's kind of like, you know, of course, you've grown a relationship with these people that you're playing with on stage, your fellow actors and singers. But I feel that when we go out during a show or a dress rehearsal where we're kind of immersed in the full experience, that I'm not looking at Leah necessarily on stage, that, you know, our characters have something to do, and it really helps you embody the character and give more than what's exactly on the page or what's exactly in your staging or what the director has told you to do. When you kind of just get a little bit it's more like, it's like almost like another level, like, because I find myself on stage like doing little things that I just feel like a 7-year-old would do, and like not so much thinking about it, but just kind of like living in that character for a little while. So I think that especially when performers are locked in like that or tuned in like that, or when you have great set design and great lighting and great costumes, that also gives that to the audience as well.
Same question, Leah. I'm imagining that if you've been singing forever, and if singing is all you've done, you probably studied and have a sense of how every follicle of hair on your crown feels in the moment of execution, and every other part of your being. Am I going too far with this? Am I looking for too much? I mean, I adore the arts and artists so much. And so I'm imagining this must be what's happening, because it's so magical and it's so wonderful and it's almost impossible. But look, I'm looking at it and I'm hearing it and I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
And so if I'm doing that in the audience, what are you doing? What's happening with you and to you?
Well, to sort of add on to what she said, and funny that you said hair, I was noticing yesterday that for me, more than a costume, it's the wig that changes how I feel about the character. Because for me, I always wear my afro, and it makes me feel like myself. But the moment I put on a wig, I am that character. I become Mama. And so it does completely change my energy and the energy of the scene for me. But what's funny is, yes, I've done it for so long, but every experience feels brand new to me. Like I never go in and it's like, oh, this is routine, because it doesn't. I'm here with another set of colleagues. I'm here with a different set of experiences and or circumstances rather, and it just, the energy of the audience is completely different in every place. It just depends on the night, and I'm very spooky and woo-woo in that way, and I do believe that there is an exchange that happens between the performers and the audience, and so it just depends on the night, and that's sort of the beauty of what we do, is that it's not the same every time. I think I'd be bored if it were. Yeah.
I'm Al McFarlane, and this is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Let me invite you to The Snowy Day. It's an opera, music by Joel Thompson. I interviewed him last week. What a wonderful interview. Lyrics by Andrea Davis Pinkney. And it's being presented starting Saturday through Sunday the 16th at Minnesota Opera. It's going to be at the Ordway as the venue, I believe, in St. Paul. A beautiful place for this production, and you should go. I'm going to pivot here as well and bring in my next guest. I want you guys to hang out with me if you can. And I want to find the connection here. And in my own mind, the connection is something about healing, our obligation to find healing, to be healers, to be healed, and how we bring that into the world. And the world is a difficult place. Brittany Friedman is here, and she's examined power, oppression, and she is focused on the fight for justice in prisons. It's a difficult topic, as I mentioned at the beginning. She's the associate professor at USC, and she's author of a book called Carceral Apartheid: How White Supremacy shares. Well, maybe I'm reading this wrong. I'll have you explain the title of that work, Carceral Apartheid. But it talks about how white supremacy shares exclusives, and it shares exclusive insights from her research, including firsthand interviews with former members of the Black Guerilla Family, the Aryan Brotherhood, Nuestra Familia, and other organized groups. And so you deal with how prison officials act as enforcers of racial oppression, and often with deadly consequences. So let's go into that. Brittany, thank you so much for being here. May I call you Brittany, first of all?
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Happy to have you here. Jump right into the work that you're doing and the message that you want the world to pay attention to and to learn. And the subset is healing. How do we move to our obligation to heal society, ourselves, our families, and the world?
I love that. It's so important, because with so much anger and grief at the moment. And I think also because of the intergenerational struggles, which I try to center in Carceral Apartheid, it presents a challenge, but it is something that we can do, as a community, as alchemists, right, to transmute anger and grief into anchoring into joy. And I think, it's so beautiful to hear about this amazing opera. I'm like so inspired, and I'm like, I wish I was back home. I'd be close enough to drive and go, because it sounds phenomenal and so important. But in Carceral Apartheid, I gave it that subtitle, How Lies and White Supremacists Run Our Prisons, because I really do center that, disinformation, illusions, right? White supremacy is an illusion. It's a falsehood. And it very much structures how our society is governed in an official capacity. And this can be through laws, right? Through the use of arrest and incarceration to contain people, particularly Black people, and then also through extra legal means, which is, often seen in law enforcement, either being the Klan or the white supremacist organization or aligning with that organization. And I show that as also existing in prisons, and how it's really foundational to the suppression of Black liberation in prisons. And I end the book though with, because I'm also a poet, and and an herbalist, and I have so much reverence for my lineage in the healing arts coming from my grandmother. Right now, I'm excited because I am going to graduate from a long apprenticeship that I will be graduating in 2 weeks with master herbalist Karen Rose from New York. And she's, has really coined the understanding of spiritual herbalism and the legacy of Black herbalists. And I'm excited because joining my work in abolition, the work I do in my book, with my love and reverence for African-American herbalism and herbalism of the diaspora, I think it is, following a long-term tradition of this connection to abolition, right? And something I love to think about too is how, Harriet Tubman is a celebrated herbalist, right? Like that was one of her incredible gifts as well. Mm-hmm. And so I end my book with that invitation, because it is a poem, if you will, on after we've seen all of this horrendous degradation of our community and suppression of movements and using our voice, and how our voice is our greatest liberation. What does that mean? What do we do next? And I want people to feel inspired, not finish my book and feel defeated, but instead feel people have been surviving this for generations. And when we come into this life, we're continuing a legacy, right? We don't stand alone. And what is our role? And thinking about what's my role? What's my gift? How can I use my voice to be a part of this legacy?
You have your book there? And can you show it to us? Yeah, show it.
So this is my book. And I actually, I picked this cover because the artist, he has a stage name actually, which is Nick Ad is his stage name. But, the artist, he made this work. The original is called An American Target. And made it because of, the long-term degradation that law enforcement has committed in terms of acts of violence against the Black community. And so he made this art. And as soon as I saw it, I told my editor, I was like, oh my gosh, if we can get An American Target as the cover for my book, it is everything that I'm writing about, as seen in that beautiful piece of art.
Would you be willing to share a part of the book, maybe either the poem for sure, or other poetry that the spirit leads you to as we speak? If there's something that wants to be said right now.
I thank you. I love that, and I would love to. So I turn to the conclusion of my book, which is called Invitation to Awaken, and I lead it by saying, for the dreamers who see beyond the veils, for the lovers who move with integrity, for the liberators who catalyze, for freedom. And then I go into, and I'll start here, where I say, the old world, which is based on the illusion of freedom and the desire to control fate, is fading away, yet still fighting to maintain an imperious stronghold. If we look closely, however, there is a new world being built, one that prioritizes love, human and nature connection, joy, and ultimately healing on a collective level. A world that rejects the old paradigm of extraction, division, commodification, and ultimately the strategic promotion of psychic, social, and physical death of the masses for the benefit of an elite few. Abolitionist dreams are not fantasies, but concrete realities that both exist and are in the making. And so I will stop there. But you know, I wrote that because there is this strong connection between healing, between transmuting, right? And even, you know, with the beautiful art of singing and using your voice in that way, there is an alchemy that is happening. And as writers, we are doing alchemy as well. And so there is this strong connection. And I love to be in community with others who are using their voice and their gifts to bring a light to a world that tries to engulf us in the darkness that is racism, that is misogynoir, that is the lies that continue to try to maintain a stronghold in our society. But the truth is that if you do look closely, you see that there is a new world being created. And that's where we have to hold that vision, because if we hold that vision, we have a powerful energy to move forward and continue to create it.
You mentioned that you're part of a legacy. What's your personal story, your familial, generational story? Whose shoulders are you standing on? And tell me about some of the people in your family from previous generations that kind of make you the Brittany that you are today.
Well, I got chills when you said that, because I feel like my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, is like very present as an ancestor. And I talk about her in the opening of my book, because my grandmother, I mean, she was a warrior. She was like a fighter. She really taught us what strength, you know, means. And also she taught us to never be afraid. I remember as a kid, you know, my grandma, she was born in 1914. And for me, as I'm 35 and, you know, squarely a millennial, but a lot of my friends growing up in Missouri, they'd be like, your grandma could not be that. I was like, yes, she is. Like, my grandma has seen a lot, and my mom is the youngest of 12. So that's why, like, you know, my grandma, when she's teaching us from several generations. And she, you know, she was a part of this huge protest that took place in 1939, very close to where my parents grew up, which is in the rural area of Missouri called the Boot Heel.
Where's that near? Where's Boot Heel near?
The Boot Heel is like, if you look at, it's the little boot of Missouri, and it's right by
Arkansas.
Yeah, like my dad was born in Kentucky, for example, just because it's like just across the border there, and that's okay. Where he happened to be born. But
yeah,
that's
southeast corner of the state, the very southeast corner of the state.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And so, you know, my grandma, she was a part of this protest in 1939 that made national news at the time, because at least 1,500 people who were sharecropping, they had been evicted, and my grandmother included. And so there's this photo I include in my book that is in the Library of Congress that my family found. And we actually find it quite disrespectful, because it just labels her as evicted sharecropper. And so I center her in the book, because I'm like, that all of these photos you see in these collections, these archives, and you can tell who categorized the photos, because, you know, a particular positionality is going to be more likely, I would argue, to categorize the photos in a way that is dehumanizing. And so I name her, and I'm like, no, this is not a evicted sharecropper. This is my grandmother, Early Ida Marie Coffee Wilderness Avery. And that's her name. And she's holding my aunt. And she has all of our family's belongings at the time were on the side of the road with all the other families that had been evicted. And I lead with her because she's just such a powerhouse in my family. And I also talk about in that opening scene, you know, my parents and their experience of growing up in the Boot Hill in Missouri. And my father going to the Haiti Negro School, which was that's what it was called. And it was a segregated school, even after Brown v. Board of Education. And how my mother and father eventually, and they went to an HBCU, which is the hometown that I grew up in. And how that whole just legacy is very impactful for how I see the world, how I call things like I see it, you know, like, and how I'm not afraid. Like sometimes I get scared, but I always try to go back to regrounding myself and saying, you know what, if someone's trying to silence what I'm saying, which has happened to me several times, and it's probably going to happen again, knock on wood, but I'm like, they're doing it for a reason. It's because I'm saying something that is disrupting the status quo. And so I need to keep talking, even if I am scared, just talking, you know, and my grandma really taught me that. And then she backed it up, which made me chuckle as a kid, because I would be like, why does grandma have like this like little pistol in her purse? And my mom was like, if you survived the Klan, you would have a pistol in your purse too. And I would be like,
you survived it, right? Yeah.
Okay, I understand. So yeah, that I lead with my family to honor my family, where we have come from, and to just show that, you know, I'm here and I'm able to write this book because of the community that I'm a part of, and also the communities that I became a part of and engaged with through the writing process. Because, you know, many of my interviews with people who were a part of the original Black Panther Party in California, who were Black political prisoners during their incarceration, most of my interviews, they're life history interviews, and they're done over like a family setting. For example, like I'd be invited for dinner, come, you know, have dinner and sit with someone's grandfather and talk for hours, and with my little recorder and my notepad, and the family's like around doing their own thing, but then they hear us talking and they're like, and then people would come and kind of like sit and like, I didn't know that, Grandpa, like that happened, or you did that. Like it was a very healing experience too, I think, for me also, but also I think for family members to hear their elder talk about their life in that way, and be so vulnerable. And I cherish that in my work, because people didn't have to talk to me, didn't have to open their doors to share their stories with me. And it's a big part of
you must have been feeling like Zora Neale Hurston.
Well, it's an honor that you would even put my name with words like that. I appreciate it. You know,
what you're describing is what I know of her work and how she operated, you know, in examining our culture and respecting, revering the experiences of our people, and capturing and preserving those. And that's what you're doing as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really did my best to treat the way that I do interview work and life histories as a ceremony. It's you know, I am trained as a sociologist, and we have our methods of social science, but I also am trained as an herbalist and as a healer. So I understand what it means to open a ceremony and to close the space, and to make sure that I am not causing any harm or reproducing the harms that people have survived. And so I always take great care in my work to open the space and make sure that, you know, when we're done, it's closed and we're clearing it out and it's moving on. And I ask for support in doing that to protect myself too, and to protect the people that I'm interviewing.
Thought just popped in my head. It's kind of irrelevant, but I'll say it anyway. I have a brother, and he and I were talking. I'm almost 80 years old, right? 77. So I'm up there, been around a long time. And he and I were talking, and he was saying, well, Al, what I've come to realize is if I put something down, if I drop something, I should pick it up, And so it's real simple. But since he told me that, I almost become obsessed with, and I hear his voice. Anytime I drop anything, a piece of paper, a paper clip, anything, I stop and pick it up. And so it's really more than that act. There's something different about being both present and accountable. And what you just said reminded me of that. You open it and then you have to close it. Mm-hmm. That's part of the process, the ritual of respecting the place, the space, the time. So two things I wanted to ask you. One is talk more about in my notes, the violent clash at the California prison that involved some 800 Black and Hispanic inmates. Tell me about that story. And then I want to bring our other guest in to talk about this question of healing and what you do as healers. And I want to have Raven and Leah, if they are willing to respond to this notion of healing and how healing shows up in their work, in their lives. Then I want us all to talk about where we are, if you're willing to, because I think there's a lot of stuff on the table right now with the direction of the country, but I also know that our people are not fearful. You just told me you're not afraid. And I think I hear and see in Leah and Raven an approach to their craft and their work that is bold, fearless, and fierce, intentional, purposeful, planful, and that expects to achieve what it seeks to achieve. And I think that is the story that we are sharing about each other and among each other and about our work. And with that, I think that is what you've described as the change that's happening on the planet right now. It's the awakening and the awareness that we are both experiencing and that we reflect and represent in every place, in everywhere, in everything we do. But talk about that and take it where you want to go. I mean, it's free form. Follow your vibe.
So I love that. So, well, the most recent riots, I can really speak to, where they fit in a larger history. And historically in California, as I'm documenting in Carceral Apartheid, there is a very concerted effort that is organized to create division on the basis of race within California prisons. And so what can make someone at most, at danger of being targeted by the Department of Corrections is their ability to unite. And so I show how the Department of Corrections begins this campaign and starts with this memo that they put out that I was able to find in the archives in 1958, which is called Special Procedures. And they start with the Nation of Islam, and then they start to expand their definition of what Black political protest looks like and how it's dangerous. And people who are over the years assassinated under this system, for example, like W.L. Nolan, like famously George Jackson, which I talked to a lot of his comrades during his incarceration, and their incarceration, they are targeted because they are uniting beyond this system of division, which is so central to carceral apartheid as a governing strategy and as a strategy of control for the populace, and using incarceration, using, detention and containing populations that are deemed as undesirable by the state, whether it be indigenous populations and detaining people on reservations in native boarding schools, or Black communities in detaining through arrest and incarceration, or migrant communities being detained in detention. I'm showing that there is this systematic pattern of labeling people as undesirable and as a threat, of using division to keep us from organizing, and then using carceral systems to literally contain our bodies,
Mhm.
And, with that most recent riot, with the history of riots, in my experience, they are often instigated by corrupt correctional officers who are trying to foster racial divisions so that people do not organize.
Interesting. And that really reflects what happens in community as well. It's the old scheme of divide and conquer, keep them at each other, and then they can't look at us because we're busy. And that's kind of what our government is doing right now, as I see it. The assembly of billionaires at the table of power and the unrelenting, set of executive orders. I think in part a grand distraction. And what we have to do is watch where the robbery is going to take place, because I think that people are set to rob the nation blind, to do it in broad daylight while we're focused on the trivia and the executive orders and all of the hatred that's behind that. And we should focus on that. But we have to also be aware that this is gamesmanship at a new level, and it's historic. And we have to look at what our history has been in dealing with these modes of deception and how we get beyond them. So let me ask you to focus on your work as a healer, and have Leah and Raven weigh in any way you feel like this conversation affects you through your work and through your being. So Brittany, go ahead. Healing. What's the end game as a healer?
I think the end game is really, first, I truly believe that if you can really see what the core of an issue is, whether it is through, working in community, working with a client, right, working on looking at the collective and thinking through what are the main issues. I think that if you can really see it at its core, then that's when you can begin the process of unearthing that is so necessary to healing. It really is an unearthing. And, I saw this really beautiful image of what healing truly looks like recently in a video. And it's a video of a cup, and it's filled with this like heavy, heavy liquid, right? Because when you're healing, it's heavy. It's a heavy extraction that happens, and how they begin to pour water in it and show how the water over time starts to purify the liquid, until eventually it's just water. And what I take from that is that it is a process, and what I call in my work, I call it truth telling as method. And I lay out the legacy of Black feminist writers and intellectuals who are in that tradition of truth telling. And I truly see it as a process of healing that is, I call it an excavation of lies and an unearthing that is taking place in that process and in that legacy of work. And that's how I see myself in the way that I write and speak, as being a part of that longstanding tradition. And then in working with herbs too, it is a process of unearthing and really addressing the core. And something I learned recently in my apprenticeship with master herbalist Karen Rose is about focusing on nourishment as well, like how nourishment and really nourishing ourselves and our communities. And when you're prescribing an herbal protocol, like nourishment is so key to allowing people to feel whole again, in addition to whatever symptoms they may be having.
Leah and Raven, when I ask you to think about being healers, what comes to mind? Is that fair for me to ask the question, first of all? And I say that I see the artist. I see the artist's mission as a mission of elevation, of enlightenment, of both discernment, the artist as a critique of human folly, human failure. The artist has a duty and a capacity, a rare capacity, to name it, call it out, and lay it out for what it is, but also has the ability to, in her craft and through her gift, breathe, as you just said, Brittany, the clean water, deliver the clean water that transforms and makes the individual, the society better. So, I'm just sort of throwing out, what are your thoughts with this direction of the conversation? And what does it mean to you? Maybe Leah, you would start.
Yeah. So I actually think of artists as being conduits or vessels of the divine. And I think that is our purpose. And so when I'm singing, I always ask God to make me a vessel of whatever I'm singing. Please use me as a vessel. And actually, when I do concerts, my favorite compliments aren't, "Oh, you sang so beautifully," or blah blah blah. It's when someone said to me recently, "You changed the particles in the air."
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I was asking about. Yeah.
And then two people said to me recently, "You healed me with that program." And I was like, "Oh, that's more meaningful than any compliment about my singing or my artistry or whatever. You healed me." Like, that's, for me, that's the point. That's what we're supposed to do. So I'm fully on board with what Brittany is saying.
And you call that alchemy, right, Brittany?
It is, yeah, it's alchemy, and I can't wait to hear you sing. Yeah, it would be an honor. I'm so excited. Just to, like I said, I wish that I could go. If I was back home in Missouri, I would drive up to St. Paul and go.
Oh, wish too.
Yeah.
Raven, what do you think?
Yeah. So Leah was kind of referencing, correct me if I'm wrong, like recitals, especially when we get to program our own, kind of just what's in your head, what's on your heart, where we're kind of more in charge of the programming. And in addition to everything Brittany was saying, that kind of has me thinking about, what draws me or us to certain roles, to certain repertoire, to certain, songs, arias. And sometimes, a lot of times at first, it might be just the music. Oh, I like the way it sounds. Oh, I think that my voice would be good at doing this. But I feel like what sticks with me as an artist over time and like becomes a part of my repertoire, or something that I really want to share with audiences, is again just how it makes people feel, or the journey that it takes people on. And at the end of the day, artistry or technique is, even a good voice teacher will tell you that technique is just something that will help you, put your artistry out there. And I think all of those things collectively, all the things we've learned in school, music school or in young artist programs, at the end of the day, art is about connection and a lot of times about healing. And, to bring back the Snowy Day a little bit, I find this work so, I find it so healing because it's such an uplifting piece about a Black boy, his family, his experience. And although Blackness might not be the center of the story, at the end of the day, it is about him as a boy. Every time you see a Black family on stage, or every time you tell a story with a Black composer and a Black librettist and Black singers, you are centering Blackness. And there's even little things in the opera that, like Leah pulls out the Vaseline, like before Peter goes outside. So there are little things that, as a Black audience member, Black audiences do get to see that. And I find this work so uplifting because, it's in English, it's immediately accessible to the audience. You don't really have to read super titles or anything when you're there, and you leave just uplifted. There's nothing about it that's heavy. And so I feel like what we see a lot in art, which is useful and needed, is, a lot of Black stories that do pull on, especially past events, are heavy and could be, they're telling traumatic stories. And those heal in a different way, I think, than just going to something and just as a Black person seeing Black joy and seeing other Black people have fun, and just kind of being uplifted by that experience as well. So that's one of the things I really love, especially about the Snowy Day too.
Well, let me remind people that the Snowy Day is presenting at Minnesota Opera by Minnesota Opera. And it's February 8th through the 16th. The opera by Joel Thompson and it'll be at the Ordway Theater in downtown St. Paul. So check it out. Number for information, 612-333-6669. The Snowy Day Minnesota Opera presentation of Joel Thompson's opera, and it's at the Ordway in downtown St. Paul.
Can I add some Black history?
Sure.
I just found this out, and Raven knows I'm so excited about this.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that Leontine Price opened the Ordway.
I didn't know it either.
I didn't know.
I didn't know it. Okay. Okay.
So,
It's true. I knew exactly what she was about to say. Yep.
it makes me so happy.
That's great information. I saw Sarah Vaughan there. It's one of my highlights. Was being at a concert with Sarah. I think it was no, she might have been at O'Shaughnessy, but it's a beautiful room. I've seen a lot of great productions there. Broadway productions. It's a great place, and I'm so glad that Minnesota Opera is doing what it's doing, just pushing the boundary, opening up the field, and it's acknowledging and inviting us to bring our gifts, our talents into the genre. And I think, as you both have said, there are many more of us than we know. And part of the challenge is that we need to make common the knowledge of our excellence in all the venues and all of the idioms where we are engaged and where we show up. Brittany, I wanted you to read the poem. Give a poem. Let me close with a poem by you. You're a poet, right?
Yes.
And let me close the show with your poetry.
Oh, you know what? I love this. I didn't have it pulled up, but I did recently write a poem a new poem at the beginning of January, because we in the early stages of the fires, my kids and I had to leave our house, but we were able to come back, and I was just, feeling overwhelmed. And if I can't find it, that's okay. I will send it to you later.
Okay.
But it is a poem that's dear to my heart, and I actually plan to release it soon for Black History Month, because I think when I was reading it over, I was like, you know what, this poem isn't just about the fires in LA. This poem is about, really like transforming through something. And how sometimes it's like you feel it in a way where it's uncomfortable. But I will just say that the poem is called Freedom Blooms in Flowers. And I can't find it right now in my notes, but it's okay, because I actually, the funny thing is, it's just, I'm like, are you psychic, Al? Because I had it in my calendar that I was going to publish this today on my Substack.
I believe in the spirit. I think the ancestors are with us all the time, and we're all guided, and we're all directed. And I think we're all connected. So I am finally grateful to each of you. I'm thankful that you took the time to be with me and have this conversation. And I applaud you. I bow to you in celebration of your majesty. Thank you all so very much. And we'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.